Multiculturalism has failed, and by that I do not mean that everyone of different cultures and races are unable to live together. That is not what I mean. What I'm referring to is the project that has appeared from the belief that all cultures have equal inherent value, and for this reason we should tolerate lots of backward attitudes and beliefs about the world from other cultures.
I think it's important to delve into the nuance of it, because a lot of people who haven't looked into this properly, what they think multiculturalism means is like black people and brown people being in the country.
Correct.
That's not multiculturalism. That's a multi-ethnic society, which can work. Absolutely can work. Multiculturalism is the idea that actually there's no such thing as British culture. There's no such thing as British identity. There's no such thing as British values. And what we really need to do is just bring people from all over the world and say, oh, you want to practice your religion, your culture, your this? That's great. Everybody live in their own ghetto, and we're all living this beautiful multicultural utopia, and diversity is our greatest strength.
Mm-hmm.
Diversity is not a strength.
Why?
Because I remember this great scene from Game of Thrones. Have you seen Game of Thrones? Do you remember when Cersei and King Robert, they're discussing the potential Dothraki invasion?
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, yeah, but we've got 5 times as many. We've got 5 kingdoms. They've got just the one. And he goes, what's a bigger number, 5 or 1? And she goes, 5. And he goes, 5, 1. Right. Unity is a strength when you're attempting to do things. Common purpose, common values, a sense of shared identity. These are things that allow you to overcome difficulties. One of the reasons the concern about immigration is as high as it is not just the levels of immigration. It's also the fact that Britain has become poorer. Our GDP per capita is lower today than it was in 2008. In other words, people's living standards are being eroded for reasons we can get into. So addressing that requires quite a lot of difficult challenges. We've got a bloated welfare sector, so you're going to have to deal with the fact that far too many people are not working and being paid not to work. You're going to have to deal with the national debt, which is way too high, the deficit. You've got like big challenges, right? And those challenges are quite easy to overcome, comparatively speaking, when we all feel like we are ultimately, at the end of the day, this is our country and we're going to sort it out. But if we have become multicultural in that everyone really only cares, we keep hearing from politicians, we need to look at the concerns of the British XYZ community, British Jewish community, British Muslim community, British Pakistani community, British Hindu, all of this stuff, right? Then we're no longer British people trying to sort the same thing out. We're people who are looking out for our own community. Our own community is Britain. That's what we should be looking out for. So diversity can be a strength in one sense, which is when you bring in people of talent and drive and ambition from around the world, and they all buy into the values of that place and then pull together in one direction. That's a strength. Just bringing lots of people from around the world and then not integrating them and not encouraging them to become British, and also bringing people who are probably not easily integratable into our society. That's not a strength, that's a weakness. So that's a big part of the problem that we have, is multiculturalism is essentially an ideology of divisiveness and disparity instead of an ideology of cohesion and unity.
State multiculturalism, where it has been tried in the United Kingdom, has served as a catalyst for racial tensions and caused very real harms for the people of all ethnicities.
So the thing to remember about multiculturalism is it's an ism, it's an ideology, and that ideology is about group rather than individual as the basis for politics, and it's about difference rather than commonality.
What do we make of that very ugly word, multiculturalism? There's a tendency to add an ism to anything that we're a little worried about and scared about.
It's a doctrine which has compromised our free speech and left our society increasingly fragmented, indeed segregated along parallel lines, and troubled, I would say now, to the point of collapse.
There is a future, but only if those of us who are part of a proud Judeo-Christian British culture not only assert that identity with confidence and clarity, but do so in a way that encourages other cultures now represented here in these islands to engage and contribute to our national life in ways that complement, not detract from, what should be a shared set of values.
In reference to political science, multiculturalism can be defined as a state's capacity to effectively and efficiently deal with cultural plurality within its sovereign borders. Multiculturalism as a political philosophy involves ideologies and policies which vary widely. It has been described as a salad bowl and as a cultural mosaic, in contrast to a melting pot.
Islam has proven multiculturalism to be a catastrophic failure. A great deal of this thinking has appeared due to cultural relativism.
Cultural relativism is the view that concepts and moral values must be understood in their own cultural context and not judged according to the standards of a different culture. It asserts the equal validity of all points of view and the relative nature of truth, which is determined by an individual or their culture.
When we ask ChatGPT about the connection between the two, it also highlights the problem.
Cultural relativism and multiculturalism are related because multiculturalism often relies on cultural relativism to advocate for the equal value and non-judgment of different cultures. Cultural relativism is the principle that a person's beliefs and practices should be understood based on that person's own culture. And multiculturalism is the policy or practice of a society promoting the coexistence of diverse cultural perspectives. However, the two concepts can be in tension, as critics argue that a strict application of cultural relativism can prevent universal standards of human rights or societal critique.
There has been a distinct lack of understanding about what the Western world has achieved that Islam completely failed to do. Since the Enlightenment, the Western world has fought long and hard for the rights of women, gay people, and minorities. Islam has done none of this. It has instead done the opposite, fought to enshrine its prejudices. Its modern face of tolerance in the West is a facade, an illusion that even Western-born Muslims believe in.
Multiculturalism is a one-way street. It's only meant to accommodate and help the outsiders and weaken the insiders.
So what percentage of people, is it possible to know a number? Because there are many people, many Muslims, and please push back or correct me if I'm wrong, who really do live in harmony with the host population. Mm-hmm. They're not blowing shit up. They're not demanding parallel courts. They're not chopping anybody, sawing anybody's head off with a rusty butter knife. They're like, so what percentage of people are we talking about?
Well, that's the question, right? And that's the difficult question. And it depends on who you ask, but whatever the percent, even let's give it a very conservative number, a very small number. Okay. The smallest number I've ever heard, even from apologists, who will say, no, most Muslims will say 10%, right? But that's still a problem, right? If you've got many millions of Muslim migrants in Europe and only 10% are going to blow themselves up or slaughter you or rape your children, that's still a big problem, isn't it? So I agree that a lot of them are not necessarily doing this. A lot of them are in it for a good life. A lot of them just are doing whatever they can. But I think the only lesson or the instruction in what's happening to the UK is it's sort of a window into what America could look like in the future. Because let's just put it this way, Western Europe is much more progressive. So they tend to reach certain progressive benchmarks before the US does. And here's where it's at. So if you look at countries like Sweden, the UK, other Scandinavian nations, but Sweden is obviously the worst, Germany, all of them really, Austria, Italy, Spain, because I follow this very closely. Again, it's not necessarily all of the migrants. That would be a complete, bedlam.
Oh my gosh,
but it's a smaller percentage, but it's still havoc what they're doing.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding, for example, we take a different kind of migrant. So Pakistani migrants in this country are far more successful than Pakistani migrants in Western Europe. So it's the type of migrants that Western Europe is taking in. Is that?
Well, you know what I think it is also, a large part of it is, it's the numbers. So in the US, there's smaller numbers that come in of migrants, of Muslims. And so with the smaller the number is, the larger the chance it'll actually assimilate in the melting pot. But what happens in Europe is they go there immediately and they get into a ghetto. They're all Pakistanis or they're all whatever, Syrians, they're all from Morocco.
Islam's foundational intolerance has been caged by Western laws, but these are slowly eroding. And if you think that these views organically disappear when Muslims are born in the West, think again. Some of you may be familiar with the channel Candid with Lubna. Lubna is an ethnically Pakistani woman who does not identify as an ex-Muslim, who has called out the disgusting misogynistic attitudes of the Pakistani community, and for that she has received death threats and had to flee her hometown. Here's an example of the types of comments she gets.
Have you seen the state of you? Seriously, have you seen the state of you? The only guys who've been near you are them horrible drug dealers, and then even they've had enough of you, and now you're going to the white guys hoping to get some of that meat. Even they're going to use you and abuse you. I feel sorry for your kids who've got to live with a piece of shit like you, growing up watching this interview thinking, look at our mum, what a slag. How dare you talk about everybody in a bad way? Seriously, like, let's get this straight. You said that we're all hillbillies. We ain't hillbillies, love. I tell you what, I'm speaking on behalf of all the Pakistanis in the UK, and we're telling you, you ain't one of us. We don't want you to be one of us. You never will be one of us. You're nothing but a horrible piece of shit. That's all you are. Makes that, what was it? What was it you said? You said, oh, I was a bit of a nerd in school. I never even swore at nobody. And when I left school, people offered me £5. Guys used to come up to me, offer me £5 and say, we've never heard a swear come out of your mouth. Listen, they were paying you fivers, but they were using your mouth for a different purpose. And let me tell you that now. You're on there, sat next to the biggest dickhead in the UK talking about all of us. They like this and they like that. They oppress their women. They oppress their kids. They don't do this. They listen to their elders. We're proud to listen to our elders. We don't oppress our women. We love our women. Do you understand? Our kids are brought up the proper way our people's kids should be brought up. Don't come on here painting everybody with the same brush because your man treated you like a bitch. But you know something? He was right. When you stay there after that interview and you hope to God that Tommy and his mates spit roast you because that's all you want. Look at the way you're dressed and you're telling our women how to dress like that. You ain't one of us. You're a fucking coconut. That's what you are, a coconut. And you know something? Everywhere somebody sees you, they should give you lanat. I'm not telling anybody to see this woman and do anything bad or do anything violent because we're not like that. Do you know what I mean? But let me tell you something. I really hope that you find God. Because the way you're going now, you're going to go straight down to one of them brothels. Because that's where you belong. Don't ever come on here again online talking bad about us Asian guys. Do you understand? Yeah, are we perfect? No. There's a bad apple in everyone. Are Pakistanis perfect? No. White people perfect? No. Jamaican people, Chinese, no one's perfect. But you fucking come on here and you painted everybody with the same brush because you've got a shit history. Do you understand? Stay where the fuck you are. We don't even want you in our areas, you tramp.
Now, as much as it was nice of this man to close the fridge door and provide us with his worthless opinion, it proves the exact thing that Lubna has been speaking out against. Misogyny, slut-shaming, derogatory views on women because of what they wear. As you heard, most of his insults were centred around the objectification of women's bodies. Is anyone really surprised that such a culture has given rise to an epidemic of grooming gangs here in the UK? If you're Pakistani, like Lubna said, it's time to start speaking up and openly criticising these people if they do not represent you. And I don't even necessarily mean in physical form. Leave comments on videos and posts, just make yourselves heard. Because at the moment you are being drowned out by these people. And it's only going to get worse for the average decent Muslim who just wants to get on with their lives.
Just how bad is the situation in the United Kingdom? Just how close we are to a total breakdown of the social fabric of the United Kingdom? Well, I've been warning for nearly 5 years, but nobody listens. But I think everyone is going to see now, very shortly. Everyone is going to see how you can reach the pinnacle of human society or civilization, and then you can just throw it away. Not because your economy collapsed, not because you were militarily invaded, but purely because your ideals the values that made you the greatest civilization in human history, you just discarded those values. We are possibly looking at a total collapse of Western civilization. And this is happening faster than even the worst skeptics could have anticipated. We have areas in the UK that are totally occupied by people who have nothing to do with Britain, who don't see themselves as British. They see themselves belonging to the culture that their parents left, or in some cases, their grandparents left many decades ago. They are not loyal to Britain. They're not even accustomed to British values. They don't even know what British values are. I don't see any liberals there. In East London, Ilford, I don't see those blue-haired Wokistanis. Yet, they are probably the first people to leave those areas because, most of these people are LGBTQ people. They're edgy, they're trendy, tattoos, colored hair. They can sense the uneasiness. They can sense that these non-native Brits do not welcome them or do not like them. So they're the first ones to flee. Yet, the moment they leave, they become even bigger supporters of this cultural degradation. They become even bigger supporters of these people. So, in my opinion, this is the Achilles heel of the West. Garsad puts it as suicidal empathy. It's this suicidal empathy or pathological altruism or this desire to appear compassionate.
So when you read about, ancient Greek religion, they had no concept of religion, and they certainly had no concept of religion as being something that is separate from the kind of the everything else. It's the relationship of people to the gods is like the gin in a tonic. You can't separate out the gin and the tonic. What Christianity does is to say, yeah, you can have gin and here's the tonic, and you can separate them out. That's the madness of the way that we conceptualize the world in the West. And Islam that has no concept that you can separate this out. And so this means, therefore, that what we have in the West is an idea that you have freedom of religion. And Jews in the 19th century had freedom of religion in the wake of the French Revolution. They are told, you can practice your religion as you want. Jews didn't have religion. They were a people. But they're being told, if you want to become the citizens of the French Republic, that's brilliant. But you can no longer define yourself as a citizen of Israel. You are now a French citizen who practices what comes to be called Judaism as a religion. And so Jews in the 19th and in the 20th century have to adapt their traditions to fit this very specific modern Western secular template. And Western secular democracies require Muslims to do the same, to conceptualize what they belong to as being a religion. But classically, that's not how Muslims understood it. Islam is a totalizing way of leading your life. There are rules that govern every aspect of your existence. God is manifest in everything that you do. The idea that there are kind of safe spaces where everyone can meet up and kind of join in a secular space is something completely alien. And I don't think that most kind of enthusiasts for liberal secularism understand this. They tend to, I think they think that the notion of the secular is something that is common to everybody. That it's kind of like, everyone has a sense of what a tree is, everyone has a sense of what a dog is, everyone has a sense of what the secular is. They don't. And so Muslims are being forced when they come to the West, are being forced into this kind of Procrustean bed of the secular notion of what a religion is.
The only reason I keep trying to interject is I'm trying always to convert what you're saying into simpler, more easier to understand language. And I guess what you're saying is the central tension there is, theologically speaking, Islam doesn't allow the separation of politics and Islam. If you are a Muslim...
Well, classically it hasn't.
That's why I said theologically speaking. There are, of course, individual people who are able to do so. But within the way that the religion is, if you follow that faith, then that faith controls everything. It controls the way you participate in society, the way you live your life, and the way you might vote in a society. Your loyalty will be to that above other things.
Right-wing anti-immigration parties have been sweeping in across the Western world. And this is hardly surprising when these problems are suppressed all under the guise of racism and Islamophobia, instead of being tackled forcefully. And frankly, multiculturalism simply cannot work if you submerge the country with tons of people with abhorrent ideas on women's rights, freedom of speech, and a secular way of life. Civilization is a learned behaviour, and all societies are not the same.